If you haven't heard of Comma AI before, it's a third-party device that looks sort of like an old Garmin. It sits in the windshield of your vehicle, and it adds driver assistance aftermarket, which is super cool. I've run it through the Mountain Loop test before, and it got all right results, but it just got a huge upgrade. Let's talk about it. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Mike, you're watching Thunderbolt Auto, and in this one, we're doing the Mountain Loop Autonomy Test on Comma AI. We've run the Comma AI through the Mountain Loop test once before, and the results were fine. If you haven't heard of it before, it's a device that you can buy to add driver assistance features to quite a large list of vehicles. And one of those is the first gen Rivian R1. And this is actually kind of a big deal for those Gen 1 Rivian owners because the Driver Plus system that came with the vehicle is pretty much just what it is, and there will be no more updates for it in the future. However, this open source third-party device adds some really great hands-free driver assistance. But it is certainly not without its caveats. It's not what I would describe to be an easy experience. It's definitely for the tinkerers. But if you're willing to tinker and get your hands dirty, so to speak, it adds some really great functionality. So what's happened since the last test until now is we've gotten a new wiring harness for it. The Comma device does come with a wiring harness that plugs right into your vehicle. And in the case of Rivian, it is kind of limited. It actually only controls steering. It has very limited amount of force that it's allowed to put on the steering wheel. It can't control acceleration and braking. And it provides basic functionality, but it's a very limited experience compared to what Comma AI can actually do and what it's capable of. So we've actually ordered a new wiring harness that's been developed by a community member. There's a huge, very devoted community to this that is much more powerful. It allows it to have much stronger force pulling the steering wheel so it doesn't run out of steering torque when you're going around a sharp corner. It's able to see the blind spot monitors on the truck, so it knows if you're trying to lane change and there's someone that's in your blind spot. And it also allows for really nice control of acceleration and braking. And this is a huge upgrade to the experience, basically utilizing everything that the Comma is capable of. So in this video, we're going to put this new wiring harness to the test and see if it actually scores better on the Mountain Loop test. If you want to skip straight to the road test, you're welcome to use the chapter markers down below. But I want to give a quick little recap of how the installation and setup works and a little recap of how the scoring works as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. By the way, if tech autonomy and testing is your jam, hit subscribe because that's what we do on this channel. Also, a quick little shout out. On my website, I have a new page that shows a nice graph and recap of all of the autonomy test results from the Mountain Loop test. I'll have it linked down below if you want to go check that out. Okay, so let's talk about how this thing is set up and how we swapped out this new wiring harness. The wiring harness in and of itself actually isn't very large, but it is kind of a bear to install. It definitely requires you getting into some pretty tight spaces. This is going to plug in between the factory autonomy control module and the built-in camera system, and it basically sort of intercepts the signal there. And this is in the passenger side footwell of the R1. So it's very tight. As you can see, I was making all kinds of crazy faces trying to get in here and get this thing installed. Like I said, this isn't for the faint of heart. This is definitely for the tinkerer. And then once you've got that installed, there's another little USB cable that routes up around the side of the windshield, and you're good to go on the physical side of it. Then you get into the software side, and this is where Comma is absolutely a double-edged sword here. I want to give a thanks to the Electric Valentines here on YouTube. He was a very great resource in helping us get things set up the right way for this Mountain Loop test. The thing with Comma is being an open source device, there's all different kinds of software you can run on it. There's tons of different options. It's extremely customizable, and it can feel a little bit daunting at first. In fact, we actually ran this 3 times through the Mountain Loop test. And it's not because something was wrong with the Comma. It's just because we didn't know what software to run, what settings to have. So it took us until the third try until we had the settings and the software dialed in there. So this is definitely for the tinkerer and the DIYer. But despite the fact that it required kind of a lot of effort and trial and error and experimentation to get the driving experience exactly how we wanted it did provide a crazy improvement over the stock system that's in the Rivian, and it even provided a pretty nice quality of life experience over just the stock comma wiring harness that we got. So a couple things to call out that we might mention during the Mountain Loop test itself. There's two main software things that you have to worry about. One is sort of the operating system, if you will, that's running on the comma. That's the software branch. So we had to make sure we were running the right branch to take advantage of this new wiring harness. And we also have a choice of model. There are many different AI models that you can choose to run. And on this particular one, we are running a model called DarkSouls V2 because it seems to do pretty well with larger vehicles like the Rivian R1T. Before we get into the road test, just a quick recap on scoring. There's two components. There's the objective, did it work or did it not score? That's the incident report. And there's the vibe check. That's the sort of subjective, how did it feel while it was doing that? The lower the score, the better. 0 is a perfect score. This is a real world test, and as such, there are some variations from run to run. I would say, 2 to 3 points plus or minus is sort of your normal error, give or take, depending on when you run the test. A couple of caveats here before we get into the actual road test. Number one, I did make some call outs as we were driving of where points were being scored, and I wasn't necessarily right on all of those. After I run the Mountain Loop test, I always go back and review the video and make sure that everything is scored appropriately. And I did call out a few things incorrectly while we were recording, and I've since corrected them. You'll see those corrections come up as text on the screen. So let's go ahead and get into the actual road test here. All right, we are off on our comma test with the angle harness. This has been a long time coming. We've had to rerun this test. This is now the third time that we're running this test. So, Jake, you want to give us a little rundown on why that is?
Well, you see, Mike, there's this wonderful, glorious thing called open software. And it's great because anybody can do anything. The only problem is there's no company behind it telling you what you should do to optimize things, and then it's not optimized in general. So we had to do that the hard way through trial and error.
Yeah, we had the wrong software installed, and then we had the wrong settings, and now hopefully we have the right software and the right settings this time. So, to be fair, it is our fault, but also I guess it just highlights this is not necessarily an easy off-the-shelf experience for someone who's not a tinkerer.
No. Yeah, I would really struggle recommending a comma to anybody that doesn't know at least a little bit about software.
But that being said, for those of us who are tinkerers, this is a fantastic, really great driver assistance tool. So we are headed out to begin the test now in front of the grocery store here. And as is customary, we got a car coming out here. As is customary, we're going to start out with will not engage because the system, even though with this new wiring harness, it is able to control both acceleration, braking, and steering, it still relies on the Rivian cruise control signal to engage it. And you cannot do that below 20 miles an hour. So since we can't go above 20 on this road, we have will not engage right to start us off. But that's to be expected. Hopefully it does pretty well on the rest of this test. Just with the the runs we've done before, steering is a lot better with this one. Something that we are noticing with the stock comma harness is that it would, on almost every turn, it would require assistance because it just ran out of force to pull on the steering wheel. This does not lack in torque. It does not lack on force pulling on the wheel at all. But we're able to engage now. And so we have full control from the comma. This is actually one thing that's actually much better on this than the Rivian stock cruise control is city situations like this. It handles the acceleration and braking much more smoothly. At least based on what have you been observing the same thing?
Yes, I will also say this version of the software is significantly better than the alpha version we were running for the Vegas speed run or whatever.
Okay.
Because the
What he's referring to is the disengagement derby, by the way.
yes, that's the one.
You should check out that video if you haven't. It's a really fun road trip where we tested autonomy. I'm going to have to nudge to start going there. I did not start moving when traffic started going. And will it go around the corner here?
Oh, holy
that
crap.
that was a nudge. It went around the corner, but it was a nudge. But
it did!
It did do it. It took the corner too tight. Less, I guess it ends up with the same amount of points. We still would have had to disengage to follow the route, but there you go. So that's actually kind of nice. So walk us through that, by the way, which model we're running and why we chose that one specifically.
So the model that's running right now is the DarkSouls V2. It's a 2025 model, and it's
a little bit older.
Yeah, it's a year older, but it seems to be extremely effective. The reason I chose it was because on the page where you can like rate different models, what was that called again?
I think it's on the Sunny Pilot website.
Sunny Pilot, yeah.
Yeah.
This model specifically was labeled as unforgiving and specifically for large vehicles. And it has proven to be really, really good. When we were driving it up here, we were doing some canyon driving, and it just glued us into the lane we were in. And it kept us centered around some pretty tight turns where most cars would have needed to slow down 10 or 20 miles an hour to handle it.
Okay, we're starting to roll just a little bit there. Oof, I didn't nudge it, but it probably should have used a nudge there because that was a very slow takeoff.
Yeah, I'd like to see that fixed in the future.
I'm going to adjust the speed here for the freeway speed limit. And, we're following with traffic nicely now that we've started moving. Very nice on that corner there. Didn't quite cross the line, but we were hugging the inside of it. No complaints on that one. Just a little note here. It does have access to the blind spot monitor now with this new harness, which it didn't before. But that doesn't necessarily mean it knows the precise location. I'm going to have to disengage here to merge in. So we'll just say disengage to follow the route on that one. And that's just because, as I was saying, it doesn't necessarily know the position of other vehicles. It just knows there's a car in the blind spot. So it can't necessarily accelerate or brake to like shoot a gap or anything. Really all that does is if you trigger a lane change, it prevents the vehicle from immediately changing lanes into an occupied spot where there's someone in your blind spot. But doesn't really affect the driving characteristics beyond that. So there was a lane change to follow the route. Perfectly executed. And
is that on here because Tesla can do it by itself?
Yes. Yep. So whether you do it manually or you trigger it to do it, you still have to intervene to do a lane change. So slowing down there. I did slow down or change the speed to follow the route, but it is slowing down a little bit on its own. There's another lane change to follow the route. Let's see if it executes this corner. And we're clear on this side. And nudge because it went way too tight into the wrong lane there. So we'll say that's a lane change to follow the route. It could be considered either a nudge or a lane change. We'll consider that a lane change, but did not have to disengage. So far, we've not had to disengage once. Oh, no, that's not true. We did the merge.
Oh, yeah.
At this point, with universal hands-free, we would have had a couple of disengagements just to follow the route. Okay, we're coming up here to a traffic light where we're going to have to turn right. I'll go ahead and turn on my turn signal. And wow, it slowed down late, but it did slow down. And is it going to take the corner? Nope. Okay.
It sees the red lights.
So it was able to see the red light, but it was the wrong red light. We had a green arrow there, but it stopped for the other red light. So that's going to be a nudge there because I didn't have to disengage it. And we're going to do a lane change to follow the route there because this lane is ending and coming up nicely behind this truck here. So that is actually one nice thing to point out. A leg up that this has currently on universal hands-free is it can stop for stoplights and stop signs.
Can.
Yes.
Should.
Please explain why that reaction. Nudge to go here because
Well,
it's really sluggish.
If there's no sign and it comes to a four-way intersection that has lines all the way around it, it might stop. You never know. And stop is a strong term. It means it slows down to 2 miles an hour and sits there for a half second and then speeds off. So
and mind you, based on my experience, back when Tesla used to roll stop signs, this isn't rolling stop signs like a natural human would. This is actually half-heartedly slowing down, but not even making an attempt for a stop. This isn't a natural roll. I'm going to do a discretionary lane change here, just so that we get out of the fast lane because people speed up this mountain. As far as lane centering quality, I'm very happy with that. That was like the Achilles heel of the stock harness.
mm-hmm.
One interesting thing to look at there is, I don't know how well it's coming across in the video, but on the bottom of the device here, you have this little arc that pops up that's showing how much torque the steering has available, how hard it's able to pull on the steering wheel. And we were maxing out that bar on almost every corner when we did this test before, but this is able to handle it with torque to spare, which is great. Lane change to follow the route.
It will also...
Failed lane change to follow the route.
Lane change? What's that?
We'll count that as a nudge. I did the lane change. I queued the lane change again,
Okay.
and I had to take over there for take over to take a turn because it was flying up on that stop sign and it was not about to stop.
Yeah. Okay. Calling comma a self-driving, like automatic UHF Tesla autopilot hands-free competitor is just a joke because it's not meant to be that. It's meant to have collaborative driving.
Okay, yeah, and that's a great differentiation to make because then it doesn't disengage when you try to drive collaboratively.
No.
Now, it is worth noting that for this test specifically, this is targeted towards a fully autonomous system. Nudge because it was trying to go into the turn lane instead of continue straight. This test favors autonomy. It wants to be a fully self-driving system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, even though this has the capability of letting you control the acceleration and braking while it steers, that functionality doesn't count for this test, and we're not going to use it because at that point, you are still engaged as the driver. You are still doing something. So just worth noting, even though that's a really great functionality that genuinely I think is really cool, it is a driver assistance thing, not an autonomy thing.
Right, yeah. But it's still even shocking how well it's scoring on this test that is all about autonomy, full autonomy.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, even though they have different goals in mind and different target audiences than, Rivian Autonomy and Tesla FSD, there's a lot of crossover and there's reason why people are comparing these things.
There are some curves it takes and it just flawlessly executes at full speed. And then other curves where it just slows down unnecessarily much.
That's actually a sentiment that I've been feeling a lot for universal hands-free. It's gotten a lot better with recent releases, but it still is an issue where it just seems to slow down or either slow down or ask for hands on the wheel in situations where it really doesn't need to.
It can't see traffic cones.
Okay, I'm going to nudge for the traffic cones here. And this goes to show you, this is a real world test and conditions change every day. These cones were not here literally yesterday when I was here. So even though, speed limit change, missed that one. So even though, there is some variation from run to run, that's real world. And I do expect margin of error on all of these tests. If you run the same vehicle with the same settings on the same test, you'll probably get a difference of maybe 2 to 5 points per run. So there is an expected amount of variation here. So I'm very curious to see what it does with this roundabout. We have seen it successfully do roundabouts. Okay, we're headed in. Okay, perfect. Nicely.
Put you on the curb.
Yep. Okay, had to nudge there because it put us up onto the curb, which is fine. That roundabout is meant. Okay, 2 nudges there. That roundabout is meant to be run over for semi-trucks, so we weren't damaging anything. But you don't want to do that in a normal scenario.
Yeah, but the car's not meant to go on the curb. What about the car, Mike?
Oh no, I can't believe that you took your Rivian off of the pavement. Status ruined.
Now I got dirt in my wheels.
Anybody get that reference? Please tell me.
8.
Leave it in the comments.
It's an after credit scene, so extra credit if you get it.
Audible warning.
Leave it.
It's not. Okay.
See, there you go. It means nothing.
Okay, so there was an audible warning that said that something inside of there's like some software issue that the processes running on the device were unable to communicate with each other, but it kept driving and it went away, so we won't count that.
It does count as a nag, though.
It does count as a nag. That little section that we just passed there, by the way, with all of those little turnoffs, has historically been the Achilles heel of universal hand. Okay, another audible nag. Lane change to follow the route. But it would always try and take those turnoffs, but it hasn't been on the most recent versions, which is good. But
stellar.
That took that corner extremely well. It did go over the line onto the shoulder there, but for that particular situation, I'm not going to count that against it. Speed limit adjustment here. It handled that very well. It slowed down wonderfully for that. Okay, that's a speed nudge right there. There was no reason for us to be slowing down at that moment.
Yeah, I've noticed it has a few of those.
One other historically difficult place is going to be right up here, this underpass. It's kind of challenging because it's a very slow speed S-curve where the lighting suddenly changes and it gets really dark really fast. So we'll see how it handles that. Beautiful. Nudge.
Nope, spoke too soon.
Beautiful for the first half, nudge on the second half. I was feeling really good about it until that last bit there. Okay,
Probably
lane change to follow the route here. That was actually a really nice lane change too, because there's a gutter between these 2 lanes and it actually handled that quite nicely. Now I'm very curious to see what it does going around the corner on this stoplight. Jake's already shaking his head now.
It's not going to
It did on the last couple.
Well, we'll see. It sees.
Okay, we're going to do a speed nudge here because it was not feeling jazzed about that. And I'm going to disengage there because it was about ready to run that red light. Ooh, someone almost got in a wreck over there. Okay, engaging again over here. So that was a disengagement to follow the route. We'll just count it for that.
Pedestrian.
And there's a pedestrian. It does not detect pedestrians. However, the truck in front of us did, and so they're shielding us from some points. So that's a win. Nudge? Nope, didn't have to nudge. Oh, nope. Okay, that had to nudge. It decided that it wasn't going to turn right. It was going to go straight instead. Oh. Yeah, okay. I'm just one continuous nudge there. Okay, coming up to this traffic circle. Yeah, okay. Well, it just decided it's done.
It's yielding to traffic.
Okay, we're gonna say disengagement for traffic control, and we're gonna be done with that because at that point I was just doing mads.
In our defense, though, they're the ones that broke the law.
That's true.
Stopped in the middle of a traffic circle.
There it was, the Mountain Loop test on Comma AI with the new angle harness. Honestly, I was pretty impressed with its performance. If you want to support the channel and you're interested in seeing the full uncut run, you can join the channel membership and you can see the whole thing from beginning to end. As far as the score goes, it actually was fairly similar to what it got before with the old harness, but it was an entirely different experience, and I would say a much better one. Whether that experience is $500 better, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. But it certainly was a much better experience, and it actually scored within spitting distance of universal hands-free. A couple of things I want to call out before we get into the specific score. Number one, I always watch through the video after the test and make sure that all of the scoring is correct. And in this one, there were actually a few times during the recording that I called out points here or there that were not correct. And so I made those corrections after the fact on the score, and you can see little notes pop up on the screen when that happened. The second thing I want to call out is the functionality that comma owners know as MADS. This is a function where you as the driver can control the acceleration and the braking while the comma controls the steering. This is a really great function that I actually love, but since this is an autonomy test and the whole purpose is self-driving, MADS doesn't qualify, and so we won't be using it on here. So without any more delays, let's just get into the actual score itself. On the incident report, it got a score of 30 and it got 10 on the vibe check. And that is an incredibly strong score compared to what we've seen before. And like I said, it's within spitting distance of the last universal hands-free test that I did. UHF on the most recent one got 30 on the incident report as well, and it got 8 on the vibe check. So just within spitting distance. I would also say that this was a solid, if not large, but a solid improvement from the previous test with the comma stock wiring harness. That one got a total score of 50, so 10 more points, with 35 on the incident report and 15 on the vibe check. So it was a solid improvement over that. But the experience was actually entirely different. So let's run through where most of those points came from. There were a few points that came from things like, disengaging to take a turn or making lane changes or things like that. But a huge chunk of those points actually came from nudges. The nice thing about Comma AI is that you can nudge as much as you want. You can just yank on that steering wheel 90 degrees and it will not disengage. But it required quite a few nudges, either just from slowing down when it shouldn't have slowed down, speed-related nudges, or when it did take a corner, it took the corner a little bit too tight and required some nudging. So this is where we run into kind of an interesting conundrum here. Because as far as actual functionality goes, as far as things that it technically can do, it actually can do a lot more than the last Rivian universal hands-free test that we did. This can stop at stoplights, it can handle roundabouts, things like that. However, because we left it engaged for more time, that opened it up to get dinged for points where it wouldn't have necessarily gotten dinged before. For example, there's one corner in particular where, since universal hands-free won't take turns at intersections, I took the point to disengage it and drove around the corner and then re-engaged, and it was just a 1-point incident. But on this run with comma, since I left it engaged, it required a nudge to move forward because it didn't do so appropriately. And then it attempted to go around the corner itself, but it took the corner too tight and I had to nudge it to get it back to where it should be in the lane. And it's this weird scenario where it actually got 2 points where Rivian got 1 point, even though it had more functionality. And that really just comes down to the whole methodology behind this test. This test is meant to encourage full autonomy where the vehicle handles everything itself. And even though a system might have better capability, it doesn't necessarily reap the benefits of that better capability unless it executes it well, unless it does it without needing assistance. And so that's basically how we ended up with a score that's almost identical to universal hands-free. As of right now, universal hands-free is extremely limited on the functionality it has, but the functionality it does have, it does pretty darn well. Comma, on the other hand, being a DIY tinkerer driver assistance system, it just lets you do pretty much anything you want. There's no artificially imposed limits to what it can do, but that also means that when it does something, it's not necessarily a super polished experience. So it's a little bit of give and take on that. But just because it's not a necessarily polished experience doesn't mean that it's not a great tool to have, especially for Gen 1 Rivian owners. If I owned a Gen 1 Rivian, I would almost definitely be using a comma daily. But that's because I'm a tinkerer. So it really just depends on what your goals are and what you want. But Honestly, color me impressed with that. So there's the Mountain Loop test with Comma AI and the Angle harness. It scored quite a bit better than the previous wiring harness and within spitting distance of universal hands-free. If you want to see a little bit more detail on these scores, you can check out my website. I'll have it linked down below. Also, be sure to hit subscribe for more of this content coming. Pretty soon here, we're getting another one of these big updates to the Rivian system, and we'll be doing another autonomy road trip with a head-to-head against Rivian Universal Hands-Free, Comma AI, and Tesla FSD, and it's going to be a riot. So make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss that. If you're interested in seeing how the last update to Rivian's Universal Hands-Free fared in the Mountain Loop Autonomy Test, you can check out this video right here. It was honestly very close, and I really can't wait to see where this goes, because all of these systems are really getting a lot more capable very quickly.